So it's been a while since doing one of these, and it's not necessarily, like, these videos aren't really urgent because most of the time I just answer questions in the comment section as I see them, but it's still fun to throw them together into a video and do this every once in a while. If you haven't gathered, this is a Q&A session I do apparently once in a blue moon, or so, but anyway. I'm gonna pronounce people's names wrong. If I do, I'm sorry. But the first question is from Christopher Prestridge, and in regards to my i7-7700K chip, he asks, have you had the problem of random heat spikes before, and did the delidding help? The short answer is yes and yes. The heat spikes are because your processor is never really technically idle unless it's off. And that's because the operating system is always asking your chip to do something, and sometimes it'll ask it for something slightly heavier. So your chip will be like, oh, well, now I need to do this really quick, so it'll spike up to like 40% load or whatever, and then that's what the heat spike is. It increases speed, so the heat output is, the heat generated is higher. Now, the reason people are concerned over the spikes is because they're dramatic. And the reason they're dramatic is because Intel uses a kind of really cruddy thermal interface material for their Skylake and Kaby Lake chips. There's a bunch of reasons they use it. I can only speculate. I've read on a few articles that say that the interface material they use is less likely to expand and contract under extreme temperature changes, which means it's going to put less pressure on the CPU die, less likely to crack it, and less likely to kill the chip. Now, I don't know if I can necessarily defend that claim, because if the chip is running hotter, you're already kind of killing the lifespan bit by bit. But at the same time, that being said, you probably shouldn't worry about temperature spiking, because the temperature spikes are only last a second or so, and that's not enough to damage your chip, like even long term. You should be worried about load temperatures over an extended period of time, but one or two spikes every once in a while is fine. I don't know why Intel doesn't just solder them. I'm sure it's got something to do with cutting costs, but I mean, it is what it is. Now, the delidding helped. It turned the spike into more of like a rolling hill. So, I mean, I still see the spikes from time to time. I also have a pretty aggressive voltage on that thing. I think it's at like 1.42 or 1.43 volts right now. And I've been running that since I had the chip, or since I delidded the chip, really. So that was like sometime in February, I think. From what I've observed, non-scientifically, just based on every time I glance over a cam, the chip idles anywhere between 35 and like 38. And then when I see a spike, it goes up to like 44, 45-ish, but then it comes back down. You shouldn't be worried about the small spikes being a problem. You should be worried about extended load times, or extended load temperatures being too high as a problem. By my recommendation, I would say 85 is probably as high as I would want it to go for 24/7 operation, but 85 is also kind of high for some people. Some people will say 85 is too high. Some people will say you can push it up to like higher if you wanted, like 87, 90, I don't know. But my general guideline is 85. Whether you follow that or whether you don't, kind of up to you. I'm pretty sure almost everybody would agree 90 is too hot. 85 is my limit. Next question is from Kyriakos Saknakis. Kyriakos Saknakis. I think that's a Greek name. I'm not sure. But it's a really cool name. I like it a lot. He asks, why do you run 1080 Ti's in SLI? And that's because running them not in SLI doesn't give me SLI performance. I don't know why I'd buy two 1080 Ti's and not put them in SLI. What I think he was asking was, why did I bother getting two 1080 Ti's? And that's because I like video games, also because I'm compensating. I don't recommend it. It's not economic. It's not efficient. You're going to spend twice as much money for not twice the performance. Sometimes you will get very good scaling. Sometimes it'll be just about double the performance. Most of the time it won't be. It'll be like anywhere between 60 and 80% more FPS. Sometimes you will get almost no increase depending on how the game is optimized. Like some games don't have SLI support. So I don't recommend it, but if you want it, or if you want better performance, that's one way to get it, in gaming at least. The British Empire, the entire British Empire asks, how well would a GTX 1060 and an i5 7600K do in terms of cooling? Would it be too hot? And to that, my answer is it depends. It depends on things like your ambient temperature, your overclock, your airflow, and like your cooling solution. Ambient temperature is probably not as big of a deal as long as you're not in a room that's like 90 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 32 Celsius, 32-ish Celsius.
90 degrees Fahrenheit is 32.22 degrees Celsius.
I was pretty close. Okay, so 32 Celsius. If you're in a room with 32 Celsius, then then those things might get a little hot, but I don't imagine most people to be in a room that toasty. So a 1060, in my experience and based on what I've been reading and watching, those don't get too hot. Like, you can put one under load for a long time and it usually doesn't exceed 60 to 65 Celsius. And that's the same with most 1050s, 1050 Ti's, 1070s, 1080s, and some 1080 Ti's. They don't get that hot because the coolers are pretty fat, and you can always ramp up the fan speed if it gets too warm for your preference. The only time I've seen temperatures exceed those is if you run SLI, which is another reason I don't necessarily recommend it. In terms of your 7600K, it depends on the overclock and the cooler, mostly. Like, the ambient temperature still has a lot to do with it, and airflow still has a lot to do with it, but those, like, the ambient temperature you can't really fix, but ambient temperature usually isn't as big of a factor unless it's already really hot. Your airflow, you can tweak fan settings, or you can, like, remove your front panel. I've seen some cases where the front panel actually chokes off fans, so you can try that, or just get a new case. I don't know, whatever works for you. But if your overclock is really aggressive, there's a good chance that not a lot of coolers keep up with it. If you want to keep your overclock, your only option really is just to get a better cooler. I don't see people complaining about 7600K temperatures as much as they do for like 7700Ks or like the new i9 stuff coming out, or the new 77, the Skylake X and the Kaby Lake X chips. I hear a lot of people complain about those temperatures. And 7700K is another hot one, but 7600K, from what I can tell, isn't as bad. So as long as you have a decent cooler and you're not being like overly enthusiastic about your overclock, you should be fine. Is that even answering his question? Would it get too hot? Probably not. The short answer is probably not, as long as you keep your cooling in check. You can ramp up your fans, you can adjust your case's airflow by dropping your front panel, you can turn down your overclock. I guess the answer is good. You can turn down your overclock. But in general, I would assume that no, you're probably not going to run into any issues. And if you want my general opinion on what is too hot, 85 and 85 for your 85 and 85 Celsius for your processor and your graphics card is what I would go by. Your graphics card will probably throttle itself at around, I want to say, the mid 80s, mid to high 80s, and your CPU will probably throttle around the low 90s. So as long as you're below there, you're fine. I suggest 85, but it's kind of flexible. Next question is from Aiden, and in regards to my Skill Trident Z RGB RAM video, he asks if you need to have an Asus motherboard to control the RAM. And the answer is no. The Skill site should tell you which platforms that the RAM is compatible with, and right now I believe that is, oops, I dropped my phone. Right now that is Skylake and Kaby Lake. It should work with all of those. I believe it also includes X99 support. I'm not 100% positive because I haven't really been keeping up with it. And I think they also mentioned adding support for Ryzen. I don't know if that's done yet, or I don't know if that's in progress, but I heard they're working on it. That being said, it's probably also safe to assume that they're also going to implement X299 and X399 support, which can be confusing because X299 is Skylake X and Kaby Lake X, and X399 is Threadripper. So I'd assume that they're going to add support for that. I don't know when that'll be available though. In my experience, Asus rolls those updates out faster than Skill does, but I could be wrong, and you might not want to take my word for it because I don't have, like, this is all speculation. I'm just assuming, so don't trust me. On a somewhat related note, people ask me about the lighting effects on the RAM, and I can't really give a confident answer on that because some people get effects where all of their DIMMs are synchronized at the same time, and mine go off sequentially. So like if I do the comet or the what's the other one, flash and dash effect, I'll see one DIMM light up, and then the next one, and the next one, the next one. Some other people will see all of them light up at the same time and just kind of come down like a rainfall or a waterfall or something. I don't know, like a wave downwards, basically. I don't get that. I tried playing around with a bunch of different things. I tried both G-Skills and Asus's software, and I can't find that synchronized option. So I think it's based on motherboard, but I'm not 100% positive, and I don't know if they're gonna implement like a toggle to switch between the two or not. But that would be really cool. I hope they do. Next question is from Tech Reviewer, and he says, I'm a beginning tech reviewer, so that's a good start. Your name is what you are, and people don't like clickbait from what I can tell. I need companies who are willing to send people products so they can get more exposure for their company. Do you have any tips? I'm probably not the person you want to ask for that, because I'm not really where I want to be yet. But starting something like this up is fun, because it's a nice creative outlet, but kind of sucks in the sense that you need some initial investment. If you're starting up, you don't have a lot of subscribers, you don't have a lot of viewers, so you're not making a lot of ad revenue, which means you're not making money. That means if somebody says, can you review this mouse or this keyboard, you probably are not in a position to say, yeah, I can do that, because the money you make from doing the video will not cover the cost of the mouse. That being said, since you don't have a lot of subscribers, companies looking for exposure are probably not going to get it from you. And that still applies to me, because I have like almost 9,000 right now, and I can make an over 9,000 joke soon. Yes. I've been waiting for that. Anyway, a company could easily send their product to somebody with like 50,000 or 100,000 or like 500,000 and get hundreds of times more exposure than they would out of me. And it doesn't hurt to ask companies to see if they'll send you something, but you kind of have to start small. Like lots of the times, I started asking companies recently for stuff because a lot of people ask me to do things, and I feel like if I just say no, I feel bad. So I'll at least put in the effort to ask a company for something. 80 to 85% of the time, I get no answer. Maybe 15 to 20% of the time, I'll get sorry, you're not quite important enough. And then the rest of the time, if there's any instance left, sometimes it'll be a yes, and then sometimes it'll be a yes, but then a few days later they'll be like, sorry, I didn't actually get the approval from my manager, I can't send you this. Don't get discouraged, that stuff happens kind of a lot. Yeah, and I get it. It makes sense from a company standpoint, because if they send you like a $100 keyboard, right, they have to make sure that whatever exposure they get from you is enough to cover the cost of the keyboard. Even if it's a loaner item, it costs money to package and ship, and I'm sure there's more backend stuff because I'm not really all that well-versed in the industry, but basically it costs them money to send you the product. Even if you're returning the product, they can't sell it as a new product. They have to sell it as either used or refurbished, so it's going to make them less money. So if your exposure is not enough to make them the money back on the keyboard or the item they send you, it doesn't make sense to send the item. It sucks, but a company's main priority is making money so that the company can stay afloat, basically. It is what it is. So my recommendation at that point is review what you have. Don't spend money going to buy new things. Sometimes it'll get you views, but I feel like in most cases it's probably not the greatest investment you can make. So my suggestion would be to first review what you have and do as good of a job as you can possibly do on it. Because if you release a video that is just good, you might answer some people's questions, but you're not going to get them to want to come back for more. Somebody will say like, okay, well, I got what I needed, and then they'll click off your video and go somewhere else. But if you release a spectacular video, you're gonna impress somebody. They're gonna be like, wow, that video was spectacular, and they're gonna click on your channel, and they're gonna go through and see if your content is consistent, if you keep the same level of quality throughout all of your work. And if you do, you might have earned their subscription. And then when you get more subscribers, more companies will be like, hey, he's a good source of exposure. Let's send him this thing and see if he's interested in that. And then that's how it starts to roll. Now, it's not going to start quick, and it's not going to start super early. I think my first review item was at around 3.4 or 3.5k subs, and they contacted me through email. It's most likely going to be somebody you've never heard of before, because lots of times it's going to be a smaller Amazon store that they're just trying to like start up themselves as a company. So they'll send you something that is usually pretty good, and then it'll be good for you too, because in most cases it'll be cheaper because it's not a big brand name thing, and people like budget stuff. So it'll help you out and it'll help them out. Now that's not to say lie about it. Don't make it look better than it is, because one, whoever's watching your stuff will be like, this guy's a liar. How can I trust his word on anything? And two, if you do happen to drive sales for that company and somebody buys it based on your recommendation and it's not what you said it was, they will return it. And if they return it, that company, again, can no longer sell it as a new product. They have to sell it as new, as used or like refurbished or something, and it's not going to make them as much money. So you're going to end up kind of costing them in the long run. Like, you're going to ruin your own name. Don't do that. At the same time, don't buy stuff from Amazon and then abuse Amazon's generous return policy. Because I've heard of people doing that, and that's kind of mean. Because Amazon, if you have Prime, will pay for your free 2-day shipping. And if you send it back, You're paying more for their free 2-day ship. Again, you're sending back an item that is effectively opened and used, so they have to sell the open box or used, and that's usually not going to get them as much money. Don't do that. And the last tip is basically keep your content relevant. It might seem kind of dumb, but I have to say it just in case, because I had somebody contact me asking me to review an umbrella, and I was like, I don't think my subscriber base will appreciate that unless there's RGB in it. Try not to confuse your subscribers. If they subscribe for tech stuff, keep it tech related. There's a good chance that if they're really into tech, they don't go outside much anyway, and they probably won't need an umbrella. So basically, to sum it all up, do reviews on what you have, even if it's older. Do the best you can, keep it relevant, and you just remember to keep uploading things. You have to build that portfolio. You can look at your YouTube thing, your YouTube channel, as like an extended unpaid internship, or a really long interview, because that's what companies will look for. If you have a large following base, and if you have like a good standard for quality, companies will be more likely to send you things, because you'll be able to make their product look good, and you'll get them the exposure they want. Again, don't lie. Just do a good job in the video. If you run out of things to review, let's say you did your mouse, your keyboard, all your peripherals, your case, whatever, start doing videos that are relevant but don't cost anything. So things like room tours or desk setups, cable management, software tutorials. You could even take your computer apart and put it back together and call it a build blog, or just do a how to pick computer parts or how to build a PC. Those don't cost anything. They just take time, and you're going to be putting time into your channel anyway. So it's a good way to get subscribers without actually costing any money. Try it. And now that I think about it, this question started popping up a lot more when Corsair started sending me things. And to be honest with you, I'm like maybe 80% positive that Corsair probably misread my sub count, which puts me in the moral dilemma of whether or not I should tell them. Oh, shh, I gotta think about it. Next question is from Bruno Nakayasu, and he's asking where the Riing Plus review is. It's here. It is right here. A few days ago, I tweeted a promotional thing NZXT was doing, which is a good reason to follow my Twitter, because if I see something interesting, I'll tweet it. So they were doing this thing where if you buy one Air RGB fan, you get a second one for free. So the Thermaltake Ring fans I have are radiator fans, so I wanted to test these fans and the Corsair fans and the NZXT fans on a radiator. Now the problem with that is the only NZXT Air RGB fans I have are 140s. Everything else is 120s. So the video is going to be slightly delayed while I wait for those NZXT fans to come in, and then I can have like a fairer comparison between all of them. I guess it's not technically a Riing Plus fan review. It's going to be more of like, these are the fans competing against each other, and this is how they do, and then you can decide based on that. Now I've already done videos on that, kind of, but this is hopefully going to be the last all-inclusive fan videos. Please stop making RGB fans, because every time they do, people ask me to do more of them. And fan reviewing is really aggravating to me. I don't have the equipment to properly test a fan. I can throw them in a case, I can measure temperatures, and I can measure ambient temperatures, low temperatures, idle temperatures. It's not a great way to test it, but it gives you a general idea, I guess, which is why I do it. But just so you know, I'm not a fan of doing that kind of methodology. I do it because I have to, not because it's right, but because that's the only thing I got. Next question is from Daniel Willingham. Maybe it's Willingham, maybe it's Willingham, I'm not sure. I'd love to see a video where you discuss the possibility of using NZXT Kraken coolers and the Corsair HD RGB fans and their respective RGB software in the same build. Will it work? Yes, it will. The effects are obviously not interchangeable, so I don't know why I need to say this, but I'm sure some people will ask. You can't use the NZXT Hue Plus controller to control the Corsair HD fans, and you can't use Corsair's Lighting Node Pro or Commander Pro to control NZXT's LED strips, and any combination of that. They only work with their own stuff, which is going to kind of contradict the next thing I say, but sort of. Right now, I'm using the Asus Maximus 9 Hero motherboard, and it only has one measly internal USB 2.0 header. So right now I have the Corsair Commander Pro hooked up to that, and then I have the Kraken hooked into the Commander Pro. That works. but the lighting is not interchangeable. Basically, I have the Commander Pro plugged into the motherboard, and then another lighting node Pro and a Kraken X62 cooler, words are hard, plugged into the Commander. This is Cam reading the Kraken right now. This is also very high, but that's because I have the fans going really low so the microphone doesn't pick it up. You can plug the Kraken into the Commander Pro and it works. It's just a USB hub, an internal USB hub, so that's fine. As far as I can tell, there's no conflict between Cam's stuff and Corsair Link right now. Supposedly there used to be, but when I started using both of them simultaneously, that problem was already fixed. So you shouldn't have to worry there. If you run into issues, it'll probably be because Cam is kind of a jerk. In my experience, lots of times it drops the Kraken X62 cooler from being visible at all, so you can't change the fan curves or edit the lighting or anything. Recently, it seems to have gotten better. NZXT released an update, I think less than a few weeks ago, that fixed the Kraken problem, and it seems to be working for me for now. But previously, I had to either reinstall it or restart it, and if I restarted, it only worked like 40% of the time. It might still happen for you. If it does, I would say check to see if your cam is updated to the latest version. From what I can tell, there's no conflicts between Cam and Link, so that's good. And then on this somewhat related note, Only Two Dangers Gaming and a lot of other people apparently ask, how did you put a Kraken X62 on the front and still keep the 120mm fans? I had to swap this fan because it was not oriented the same as these other two fans, and I didn't notice until I edited my last video, and it drove me freaking nuts. So I fixed that one, and I also recorded it, so I can put in the recording of me doing that. It'll show you how I mounted it. It's a really dumb way to mount it, but it works. So yeah, the Kraken X62 is here. These are the 120mm fans. These are the 140s. The 140s are mounted to the Kraken, and the Kraken is mounted like over the 120s. So here's the screw that goes from the chassis to the Kraken, and it just it doesn't go through the 120s, it just passes them. So it's kind of, this is the screw that's holding the Kraken in place. So it's kind of like ghetto mounted, but it works. So I guess it's okay. And the screw is pretty straight, not perfectly straight, but it's pretty straight. So I don't believe there to be any uncomfortable torquing going on. There's only 4 screws in the Kraken. There's this top one, there's this bottom one, and then there's the same 2 on the other side of the cooler. So like here and down here. And that's how that's mounted. It's the only way I could think to mount, because this I couldn't get this to mount up top, no matter how hard I tried. But that kind of works out, because if you mount it up here, it sort of covers the top of the motherboard a little bit, which is not that big of a deal, but maybe some people want to see the like the LED indicator or something. I don't know. I couldn't get the Kraken to mount up top. The only thing I could think to mount it here without ruining the front aesthetic was by mounting it over. So it's kind of like a ghetto push-pull, but it works, so that's what I'm rolling with. Next question is from Uther. I think that's how you pronounce that. Where them video blogs at? And the vlogs are not super high priority. They come relatively slow because I'm relatively uninteresting. In order to make a video blog amusing, you have to do amusing things, and most of my day consists of either sitting or standing at my desk or working. It'd be kind of weird to see me bring a camera into work and then just kind of record myself listening to music all day. There's not a lot of that yet. There might be more. I do record things every once in a while. There's just not as much interesting stuff in a single day to put it into a vlog. So one vlog is probably going to consist of several days scattered over like a month or something, basically. But they'll be popping up every now and then, so they'll be around, just not very frequent. Next question is from Leo Bjork, asking, are you going to upload PC builds on your channel? And the answer is yes, but not soon. And that's because PC builds are expensive and I don't have sponsors, so people are not going to be sending me things just so I can put them into a machine and then like record it and then do a video. Obviously they're expensive, so I can't just say I'm gonna build a machine to put it into a video and then like just keep the parts. Like, all the parts I have now are parts that I've needed or used previously and replaced. So like a lot of the things you see are just old things that used to be in my personal rig. I'm just a pack rat, basically, and that's what I use for all my builds. I mean, technically the case reviews are builds because I always build in them when I review them. The last video I did, how to build a PC, was also technically a build log. So I mean, if those kind of count, yeah. But I don't get to do the fancy builds like what what Paul and Kyle from Paul's Hardware and Bitwit do like every month. So yeah, I don't make that kind of money yet, but when I do, I will. Or at least I'd like to. Next question from Gabe the Gamer is Set Me Up dead? No. Set Me Up is the show I do that's kind of copied from kind of like Random Frank P's what's it called? Room Tour Project and TechSource's Setup Wars. It's not dead, it's just very slow. That was started as a side project for fun because I like seeing other people's setups. It's cool to me because other people's, I guess, creative outlet is fun to look at. It's a side project, it's not canceled, it's not dead, it's just very slow because as a side project, I try to prioritize the reviews and the guides and the tutorials and stuff. So all those side things get pushed back, including these Q&A videos. Because, sorry, I don't know. I'm hoping they'll be more frequent soon. I just can't promise it right away. Next question is from KC, and he asks, do you have another job during the day? How many hours a week do you devote to making videos? I do have another job during the day. I work for Dell EMC as a portfolio analyst, which is a fancy way of saying I do math. As stereotypical as it is, I like crunching numbers, so that's what I do. As to how many hours I devote a day into doing videos, it's usually as many hours over the weekend as I can. Over the weekends, my friends will come over usually on Friday and Saturday, usually Friday, sometimes Saturday. And whenever they're not over, I'm doing a video. They'll leave anywhere between 3 and 4 in the morning, which is why a lot of my recordings happen between like 4 and 10 a.m. And then I'll sleep for a couple hours, I'll wake up, and then I'll go to editing or scripting or working on the next one. Over the weekdays, it's usually, it used to be a couple hours a day, and that dropped to about 1 because I started exercising because apparently your health is important for living longer or whatever. I should probably stop drinking these at some point in time. And on a somewhat related note, the next question from Text for You Reviews asks, you like Monster, right? And to that I say, no, not really. I drink it because I like it more than sleeping in the middle of the day, and that's about it. The Monster Zero, or the 0 calorie one, tastes pretty good because it's like kind of citrusy, but the normal Monster tastes kind of, it vaguely reminds me of battery acid. Next question from Brian Mann is, y'all got a Discord server for games and stuff? I have a Discord, I do not have a Discord server. I don't play a lot of multiplayer games, and I feel like most likely that server is going to be used for people asking questions, which I'm not necessarily opposed to, but I already have things like Twitter, Instagram, and email where you can ask me stuff there, and I'll usually answer pretty quick because I get notified quickly. Facebook is not the greatest way to get in touch with me because the page doesn't give me an audio notification. I'll only know if somebody messaged me on there if I physically open up the page and look. So that's not great. YouTube is also not the greatest way to get in touch with me anymore because it's been dropping a lot of comments recently, or a lot of notifications. I'll see one new comment on my phone, but when I go to check, there's maybe 10 more. So at least 80% of the comments I get are dropped. So I have to physically go through my my Creator Studio comment section thing and look to see if I've gotten anything new. And I do this like anywhere between 3 and like 7 times a day. So that takes up a lot of time. So if you want something quick, Twitter, Instagram, email. Those will notify me. If you want a comment to be public, or if it's not something urgent, you can find me any other way. But in terms of like setting up a Discord server for that, I already have enough things to keep track of, and I'm very easily confused. So it's not really in my current plans. And the last question for the day from Scientific Gaming is, how dim are you really? I am this many dim. And so that's all the questions I have for today. I answer as many questions in the comment section as I can, but putting them in a video from time to time is pretty fun. So if you want to keep this up, just keep asking questions. Thanks for watching. My name is Steven, and I am literally a little dim. Bye bye. Also, if you see my eye twitching a lot, or if I'm blinking more than I should be, it's not because I'm nervous, it's because I think I scratched my eye and it's really uncomfortable. So, or you can say I'm winking at you, I don't know, whatever you prefer.